My name is Madison, and this is my video for week 7 discussion. It tells us to choose a prompt, and I chose prompt 1 that says, structural racism operates through systems and institutions such as employment, housing, healthcare, and criminal justice that produce unequal outcomes even without overt racist intent. Can you identify an example from your own community or experience where structural racism might be at work? How does understanding racism as systematic rather than just individual change the way Christians might respond to issues of racial injustice or racial justice? I said an example from work experience where structural racism is happening is an occupational segregation, like where mostly whites or non-colored people get the higher up jobs, and whereas like the colored get like the lower, like they don't get promoted as much as white people do. I said structural racism is also in the workplace that can involve unfair treatment, harassment, and offensive comments, failing to hire because of color, failing or not wanting to mentor someone because maybe they're a racist and they noticed that it was a colored person and they just don't want to deal with that, I guess. Like I said, promotions, unequal pay, and housing discrimination, which that doesn't really have a lot to do with the workplace, but I feel like it's not talked about enough because, like, say a colored person, goes to jail and they get out and whatever they got charged for is going to be on their records, and say you're wanting to rent a place and that person or the landlord or the renter or whatever sees that, they're not going to want to have that around. And then I also said when structural racism is involved in a workplace, it can also cause a hostile work environment. So it's definitely not like a safe environment to be around when it becomes hostile, because you don't know what could happen. You can definitely get uncomfortable. And then I said understanding racism as systematic rather than just individual can change the way Christians might respond to issues of racial justice by changing the approach from focusing on rather just the individual, and focus on fixing the systems rather than fixing somebody who is racist or so-and-so, whatever. I feel like it is really important from my perspective, like seeing the world. It's definitely important to, focus more on the system rather than just the individual. I know it's not always like that, and it's a lot easier to focus on the individual because you feel like you can change that more than you can the systems. But then I said it moves the response from individual acts of charity to prophetic, structural, and institutional action, seeing the issue through systems rather than just seeing the issues through people. I feel like that's definitely important because obviously our system is definitely messed up. So it's good to focus more on the other things rather than just the individual being like criticized and stuff like that.